Another draft physics video presentation. Where to begin? Lots of horrible videos today, 3 of them. Piro, Al-Kahari guy, and this. Sabine. And the comments are just so full of idiots. And, this is... I kind of thought about it, and I said, well, what's the project here? This is just trying to explain, come on, do you give a shit about the truth or not? Do you care what the truth is made out of, which is sort of evidence? You have to make a chain of reasoning. So it's like, if aliens came here tomorrow, you'd have to explain it to them. And are you going to just use this woo? You're just going to make up this crap, and you're not going to cite any explanation for why you think so. You're just going to make declarations about the reality that are based on completely unevidenced theories. No, you're gonna feel the obligation to explain it and defend it. And nobody seems to have that impulse at all. They can just make their declarations about how Mohammed is God, and that's it. And it just sounds just like religion. And it has every feature of it. So I was thinking about evolution, and the fact is you could do without Darwin, you could do without any evidence really, big piles of evidence, just from what we can, what we've known for thousands of years even, and make a pretty persuasive argument defeating religious theory, in the sense that you will compile a lot of evidence very quickly about how things work. You just take a fish and take it apart, and you can find these similar features, numbers of digits, spinal cords, lungs, bladder, then lung. You can find the features, and then you could observe that the ocean has these air-breathing creatures in it, and you could say, well, how did these, what are they doing? And then you just point to seals or walruses or something else that's doing both. And you say, it's just one of those, and it's just decide to say, forget about sitting on icebergs now and then, we'll just stay in the water. And it's clear that that would take a long time for it to change into something else and to migrate into the water. And you can see it in the, the ground is screaming it to you. Here's an old volcano, really, it's going to be really, really old because it's all eroded and it had to take a long time for that to happen. Very, very long time. Big canyons in the ground. The evidence piles up really fast into a pretty coherent theory of evolution. And it just seems like there's a huge resistance to belief, and that's all there is. It's not in the evidence, it's not in the facts where the problem lies. The problem lies in the bigotry and the bias of the devotees. They want their God to be God for some dopey reason. Some point in their life they got some silly notion like a Piro in their head of their shaman. I'm a shaman. I was Cleopatra. They get some notion in their head and they have to force reality to keep the notion alive. Because that's their identity. That's their little spirit belief. And, some sort of crap like that. Because obviously they're not seeking the truth. Because the truth is screaming, your answers aren't right. They don't fit the evidence, and you keep lying about how well they fit the evidence when they don't. Alternative theories do explain. So, daunting task. I do have this underlying belief that people's brains are made to work. They're not made to be shit for brain. You're made to be able to reason and to do so reasonably fairly. And that the real catch is, I guess, early in my life I became, this word's not going to sound plausible, but humble, in the sense that I recognized the fallibility of my perception, and that I could be fooled, and that I did think things that were stupid. And I realized, well, that's a weakness that I have to protect against, is these lazy conclusions, or believing something because my daddy does, or some kind of crap like that. And, these are real dangers, and I guess a lot of people haven't gone through that transition of worrying that they're living a lie, that they're doing something or participating in something that is just plain shit, nonsense, rubbish. An example would be I had a certain love of nature. I had, as a kid, even though I saw all this horror in it and all this bad, I liked it so much better than people because it was understandable. Its rules seemed simpler, and it was just somehow I had just much more affinity with trees and animals than I did with people. People just seemed too erratic and incomprehensibly, not consistent. So anyway, but I mean, obviously, I had to grow up and find out that it's just a dumb system. There's nothing to really revere in it. There's nothing truly beautiful in it. That my perception of attractiveness was completely just subjective crap. It didn't have anything to do with anything rational. I wasn't judging things based on rational standards. I was judging them based on an irrational personal preference that had nothing to do with good or bad in any real sense. Well, anyway, so you have to recognize this capacity to get it wrong, and to get it wrong fanatically, or to get it wrong in some fundamental way where you're just going to sit there and make, it's kind of like fat people making rationalizations for being fat, like fat is superior, fat is better. The meat eaters, with the incessant effort to turn human beings into tigers, like they're somehow made to be predators, and they're made to drink blood and chew on flesh, and that's it's not even close to the design. It's the anti-design. It's not even close, and yet they're trying to force it. Anyway, so that's. This would be a fun adventure if it was really about the facts and about the truth, instead of just being about arguing religion. And unfortunately, the audience isn't interested in facts and developing a rational theory. The audience is just interested in something that validates some sort of bullshit they believe in. So, yeah, it's just really irritating. Nothing you can do about it except attempt to persuade people that to be in this competition, you have to defend what you're saying with some sort of reasoned argument. You can't just say it and then say, that's the truth, we proved it, when you don't have any of that stuff called proof. When your two-slit reality doesn't fit your mathematics, doesn't fit your theory. Waves don't do that, and it's just a fact. They don't do what actually happens. They do what you misdraw, but they don't do what actually happens. Alright, anyway. So, I guess we'll play this. Let's see, play button is where? Way over here.
This must be one of the most common misunderstandings about quantum mechanics, that quantum mechanics is about making things discrete.
Alright, so look, it had a history, quantum mechanics. It was originally called quantum electrodynamics because it really just had to do with the fact that electrons and photons interacted in kind of what was perceived to be a consistent way. They had rules, and the rules had an outcome. So it did start off much like the simple argument about the two-slit experiment, right? The simple beginning argument is that, okay, you have slits, and what does water do? Well, water sticks to the side of the slit, so we know the water molecules that go near the side do something different than the water molecules that go through the middle. So we know the discrete water molecules are doing something different because of the physical impediment. The physical impediment creates the wave by creating friction. So we know there's a physical reality. We know it it is discrete, that each water molecule is in a different environment and experiencing a different thing. And they changed that perception somewhere in this process, that, oh, no, it's not that there's each photon does a specific thing because it has a specific environment. They just said, okay, we're just going to, like Feynman, we're just going to say it doesn't matter where the photon goes through, the same probability happens. The same, it's going to do the same thing as possible. So it can go left, right, straight, it can do anything. So it's, this one could go fast, and this one could go slow, and this one could go medium. That somehow it doesn't have anything to do with its physical reality, it just has to do with something called the probability. And so the real point here is that the idea of quantizing comes out of the idea of what is light. And they had this real problem of this idea of combining this wave idea with this idea that the fact is that it is made out of energy, quanta, a certain amount of energy that's moving, and that the energy is really being decided by something called this distance between things, and that if I make the distance smaller, I give this thing more energy. But it was really just about the difference between understanding that it is made out of discrete bits, that is the quanta, and that's why they use the word quanta, because it is discrete bits, and you're just conceding that it has group behavior. So when I take a bunch of it and I make it do something probabilistically, just like with this slit thing, you're just saying, well, look, okay, I'm going to pretend I don't know that the slit surface is actually causing the phenomenon. I'm going to pretend it really isn't. You're just saying that there's this probability. So in the same sense that the water wave, you could say, well, let me just pretend I don't know that these are moving slower and that these are moving slower. I don't know why it's happening. It's like it could be this water molecule that ends up over here, and it could be this water molecule that ends up here, and it could be this one here. So it's just, you're just saying there's a probability because there's a variance in the function. So the machine creates a variable output, and you're just saying, I'm going to pretend I don't know okay, what the cause of the effect is, and I'm just going to say there are certain possibilities, and the possibility just has to do with the odds of the bit going here, or the odds of it being here, or the odds of it being here. And if it's the same odds for all those locations, the same number of quanta go here, and the same number go here, and the same number go here, well, then obviously you can just turn it into a probability. But you haven't defined the reality. And certainly there's plenty of physicists who still believe it matters. Okay, not all physicists think it doesn't matter where the photon goes through or how big the polarization is or any of these things matter. Of course they think so, some. The many worlds people, for example, certainly think it's all discrete because it's only through the discrete tiny interactions that you can cause, all right, the collapse of the wave function and create a new universe. There wouldn't be any difference between the universe if they weren't quantum differences between the universe, not wave differences, not group differences, but individual differences, one single little bit differences.
But it is an understandable misunderstanding because the word quantum suggests that quantum mechanics is about small amounts of something.
It really is, and it's the whole Heisenberg principle. So, this keeps coming up over and over and over. I mean, I saw it in the Puro idiotic video, so I guess this is another thing to, the black body radiation experiments and these different, the ultraviolet crisis. And this just had to do with the idea, okay, that they don't understand that there's a reason why, okay, the atom has places where the electrons are going to be located, in specific distances from each other. And the distances are going to be dictated because of the tension between the electrons. And the fact is they have to even the tension even though their distance from each other might be different. So these different distances have to equal the same amount of pressure in the end. And what the real governing factor is there's a force bouncing back and forth between them. So you can understand that there's no crisis it's always harder to make an X-ray than it is to make an infrared or an ultraviolet or a regular white light. They all have a different difficulty in making because you actually have to force electrons really close to each other to create an X-ray. So you need a lot of energy to push them that close to each other. I mean, again, it's the simple ping pong paddle argument that, if you have two objects, that's really not in the screen at all. I guess I have to move the camera. I guess that's the only option. And I just put a ping pong ball bouncing between them. You can get it that if you have to get really close for you to create something that would create a frequency that would be at the X-ray range versus the ultraviolet even. X-rays are much smaller than ultraviolet. It's not, the difference between infrared and ultraviolet going to X-rays is tenfold that much difference. It's so much more energetic, so to speak. That is, you have to create a tremendous amount of pressure between two electrons. So just the idea that their model doesn't understand that there is that the actual thing that's creating the frequency is the movement of an electron. The electron is in a different place, therefore it reflects to the world in a different way. The paddles are closer together. That's the way you're creating this frequency, is you actually have to move an electron from this position to this position, okay, back and forth. So if this electron moves this way and then it goes this here to this position and it goes to this position, it goes to this position, you could understand that if I was actually wobbling or had a clock pendulum, you know that the fastest the clock pendulum can move is the speed of light, right? So you know that there's, at certain distances, okay, at moving the speed of light is kind of a slow speed, and that you can't move those distances any faster. I mean, you can't get an output, okay, from the pendulum. You can't make it go any faster because it's already moving the speed of light. That's your limit. So there is a limit, So some of this Heisenberg stuff is right. I mean, there's a Planck stuff is right in the sense that there's Planck limits to things. And that's all it's really saying, is that moving something at the speed of light, there's a certain distance, and then, there's no more movement because you're already the size of the object itself. You can't move something that's already bigger than the movement you're trying to move it. Almost argument. But again, you don't need to understand that to understand that there should be a lack of energy creation at these higher frequencies, because it takes energy to make energy. You can't make the energy unless you put in some kind of energy. So to get to those high frequencies, you have to compress a bunch of electrons. But anyway, just has to do with their model. Their model isn't a rational model, okay? They don't even know what's creating the pressure between the electron. They don't have a mechanism. And here they are making these declarations. It's just terrible.
Indeed, if you ask Google for the meaning of quantum,
why anybody would ask a Google is, it's just beyond me.
First, the definition. A discrete quantity of energy proportional in magnitude to the frequency of the radiation.
Yeah, so again, this idea that frequency is the dictator of energy, when you have to understand that really frequency just means that you can put more in a smaller space, but the quanta have the same energy. And that was part of Einstein's argument with the photoelectric effect, is that it's about the quanta, okay, and it's so it's definitely about the discrete bits. It comes in clumps, and the clumps are all the same. And you can change the frequency, which changes the amount of energy per moment of time.
Represents. Problem is, just because energy is proportional to frequency does not mean it is.
Right. Well, it really isn't. But again, I don't want to get So at least you said proportional. So you didn't put an equal sign. But clearly in their math, they put an equal sign. Frequency is momentum, which is not true.
Discrete. In fact, in general, it is not. The reason that quantum mechanics has become associated with discretization is entirely historical.
Yes, it has to do with the history of the word and its creation, and the idea that this is what, That's how they started. And now you're the ones who modern physicists are saying, no, we're going to pretend nothing is making nothing. And it's just silly.
The first signs that something was not quite right with the fundamental theories of the 19th century came from atomic spectral lines. Atoms can absorb and emit light only at certain frequencies. If you think that atoms are basically blobs of particles...
See, she says here something she has no reason to say. So if you think it's a blob of particles, okay, fine.
Stuck together, which was what people thought at the time, then this makes absolutely no sense.
It makes plenty of sense because nobody had that perception. So everybody knows that there's distance between them. They're charged. They knew what that was. So again, she's saying that the only model you can create is this. So let's understand. If the aliens did come here and they say prove it or give me evidence, right? They don't have any evidence for this model where the electron is swirling around. All right? They don't have any evidence of that at all, and they certainly don't have any reasoning that explains their new perception that the electron is in some bizarre orbital, okay, out here doing this kind of nonsense. There's just no evidence for it. It's just their model, and their model is wrong and stupid and incorrect. And there's other models that make it much more rational to understand. So if you just make it a magnet, you just take it for real, okay? There's an excess of positive in the nucleus because it's neutrons. Neutrons are neutral. They have an electron and a proton, and you have a bunch of extra protons. And clearly the negative bits, okay, would align themselves. If I put 3 of them here, the 3 of them will align themselves equidistant from each other. There would be geometric rules to where the electrons could be. And if there was going to be another electron in this configuration, it would have to hang out over here, or over here, or over here. Because yes, it's still attracted to the positive when it's far enough away from the negative. And the rules would be is that this energy between the electrons would all equalize. That is, if it was more distance, it would have fewer bits, and if it was closer, it would have more. I mean, the pressure would increase. And that increase in pressure would push things apart. So they have to have a balance between those two things. So the point would be is the ones that are closer to each other would have to have fewer little bits going back and forth. And the ones that are further from each other would end up with more little bits going back and forth. And so the pressure could be equalized. But again, this model works. You can say shared electron would mean that it's actually shared because it's actually in a position in space. It's not flying over here and going over here. And none of that crap makes any sense at all. But she's saying we can't figure out that this distance, okay, this distance, you see, no, I can't see that line, but anyway, this distance wouldn't be completely commensurate to this distance. That this would be a distance, this would be the next distance, there would be a next distance that an electron could be at, and there'd be another distance that could be at, and it couldn't be halfway between because there's no balance between the charges at that location. The electrons are going to push too much here. There's going to be too much pressure between the other electrons. So it can't sit in some place in the middle. It either has to be here, or it has to be here, or it has to be here, but it has to obey the geometric rules. And that works. And she's saying somehow it doesn't. They proved all of these arrangements. Any other arrangement but their silly one. So it's Jesus or nothing. They say they've proved that all the other religions are silly, and only their religion can do it. Well, no, of course, there's literally thousands of ways you could understand that there would be a pressure thing between these protons and these charges that would force there to be specific rules that would require electrons to be in orbits, technically, to be in orbitals, to be specific distances based on how many elements you put in here. Like I said, I put 4 elements in here, then obviously the positions of the others are going to be different. This is terrible. They make these assertions. It can't be done. Yeah, it can be. You haven't even tried, right? You have no evidence to think it can't be done. When, yes, it can. And just as, like, say, the absence of missing links, that is, the absence of A perfect fossilized record can be perfectly explained just by pointing out how fossils aren't made every day. And so you don't get to see what happened on Earth every day.
According to quantum mechanics now, the negatively charged electrons occupy shells around the positively charged nucleus. These shells cannot have any radius, but only certain values of the radius are allowed. Just what shape the shells have and how large they are can be...
So it would be perfectly rational to expect there to be very consistent, they would all be consistent to how much charge is in the middle. That those radiuses would be dependent on how many protons are in that middle nucleus. That would dictate where those radii would be.
Calculated with quantum mechanics. And this explains why atoms can only absorb and emit light at certain frequencies, because the energy of the light must fit to the energy that moves an electron from one shell to another.
And the point would be is why do you think that's happening? How do electrons expel this energy? And it's not because they think it's already in there. I mean, it's already trapped between the electrons. I pull the electron out, I've released whatever there was bouncing between those two electrons. That energy is now free, and that has a consequence in the sense that it's going to create a photon. But the more important part is you're taking something, you're moving the paddles. The electrons are the paddles. If I move the paddles to new locations, it means they're not only changing in how they interact with each other inside, they're also changed in how they're reacting with the rest of the world on the outside. And that's the part they completely discount. They don't recognize that everything that moves in the universe isn't moving just relative to this and this. It's moving relative to this also. So when this moves here, it didn't just change this guy's world, it changes this guy's world. Okay, this guy out here that you're not paying any attention to, he's going to see something different between him and that. They're going to reflect the universe back at each other from different locations with different amount of energy, because now time is different. The amount of time it takes to communicate with that object is going to be increased or decreased based on the movement. I mean, a quantum theory answers these questions. She's saying somehow they proved it doesn't, which is just nonsense.
So yes, the energies of electrons which are bound to atoms are discrete. But the energies of electrons or of any particle really are not always discrete, and neither are other measurable quantities.
So says she. So she makes this declaration that they're not discrete. There's no reason to believe they're ever not discrete, that they're ever not there, that they ever disappear. Atoms just don't spontaneously fly apart. Things don't ever spontaneously do anything. It doesn't happen in the real universe. There's no reason to believe it ever happens in the real universe. And they just keep talking as if they have some kind of reasoning to prove that that's the way it is.
The energy of a photon traveling through empty space, for example, can have any value according to quantum mechanics.
What does that even mean? Yes, it can have any value specific to what its value is, okay? I mean, red light is red light and blue light is blue light. Now, you're going to argue that they don't know they're red or blue light, that they're not a real configuration of light? I mean, I don't even know what that means. It's such a nothing statement. Oh, you mean they all can travel through space with the same ease? Well, yes, they're all the same thing. So yes, all the penguins can swim in the ocean with the same ability to swim in the ocean. There's nothing preventing one penguin from going just the same as the other penguins. I mean, what is this? As a statement, it just doesn't say anything.
The energy is not discrete. Or
again, so she just said again, as a declaration. How do you know it's not discrete? How do you know it's not right there? It's made out of the little bits, and yes, you can separate the bits, and you can change the bits by interacting with something. You can take bits out, you can manipulate the bits, but the photon is bits at a frequency that has a specific polarization. None of these things they understand. They don't even understand what a polarization is. They have no clue what it is, and yet they're making these statements. I emphatically say so. So this is how they would talk to the aliens. The aliens would show up, and this is how they would, my God is God. Here's the Jesus story. I mean, that's all this is, because they're not going to provide the aliens with any of the evidence that proves any of this stuff, because their evidence sucks. They'll never show you the evidence because the evidence is, well, a friend of mine drew it on a piece of paper. A guy I really like, he drew that, and so therefore it's the truth. No reasoning required, connecting his drawing to what I'm saying, though. I'm not going to explain how he proved all the other theories wrong. It's so bad.
If you look at an electron in the conducting band of a metal, it can be at any position.
So, just complete nonsense. If you look at an electron in a metal, you can't do any of these things, right? All you can do is look at group behavior. That's it. So, big surprise that if I take 1 million humans, I'll find out that some of them are going this way, and some of them are going that way, and some of them are going that way. Right. And that means they're all going this way, that way, and this way. Every single one of them is doing everything the group is doing. That's not the truth. The truth is it's made out of a group. You're analyzing group behavior and then saying every individual is doing what the group is doing. That's how fundamentally, simply flawed their logic is. They know they can't look at the individual discrete object, yet they'll pretend when I looked at 1 million of them, they were going this way and that way and that way and that way. So that means each individual had to be going this way, and they had to all be superimposed. Doing everything at once. I mean, it's that trivial an error in logic to say the individuals are each all doing the same thing. Each fish in the school of fish is going the same way. Obviously they're not. Or the school would be moving, right? So you know that, no, each fish is going a different way, and it adds up to a certain probability of behavior. And that's all. You can't observe groups and then call the individuals the group. It's just such a fundamental, illogical way of analyzing the evidence.
The position is not discrete. What then does it mean to have a quantum theory as opposed to a non-quantum theory?
Well, apparently you can't have any other theory, okay? You don't have any, you don't give any latitude to the existence of any other theory, except what you would call some sort of pseudoscience or something. You accept nobody scrutinizing or critiquing your physics and its evidence, yet you will debunk and mock any other theory that doesn't fit with yours. It's just that simple. It's the religious guy pointing out to the other religious person, well, who made your God? I mean, it's that bad an argument, right? I mean, you know, they expect other people to produce evidence they haven't produced themselves. Where's your evidence? Well, where's your evidence?
A quantum theory is one in which you have observable quantities that obey Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Well, so here we go. So why are you calling it an uncertainty principle? Why don't you just call it the Heisenberg uncertainty law? All right? Why don't you just quit pretending and just declare you believe in this Jesus story? And it's just a Jesus story. There's absolutely no good evidence that any such thing as a superimposed particle that doesn't know where it is exists. None. You have no evidence for this theory being true beyond your imagination. There's nothing called evidence. There's no good reason to believe.
Principle. Mathematically, this is not entirely the correct definition.
Yeah, so it doesn't even work. So they have to concede, well, mathematically it doesn't really work, but, close enough. And we want to believe it. And that's all this is about. They want to believe it. It's that simple. Because the evidence is horrendously absent.
More precisely, a quantum theory has operated.
The evidence is that they do the two-slit experiment and they pretend that it doesn't matter whether the photon goes right near the edge of the surface or right through the middle. They just pretend. Water makes a wave. They pretend that it isn't because molecules went this way and one molecules went that way and molecules went that way. It's that every molecule went every way. Why would you pretend that? Why would that be your conclusion? Why wouldn't you recognize there's rays of force even in the waterway, in the water waves? There's lines of force. The molecules are moving they tend to move in straight lines from the inside to the outside. That's their tendency.
For observable.
I shouldn't say they move. They spread their compression. The volume change moves in a straight line. The dominoes fall.
Which do not commute. But for what the physical consequences are concerned, the uncertainty principle is what tells quantum from non-quantum theories.
Oh, well, whatever. So there you go. She's basically just said it, okay? So quantum physics now isn't about the idea that the energy comes in clumps, which Feynman would say, right? A quantum physicist. So apparently Feynman doesn't know what he's talking about. Feynman said, photons aren't waves. So obviously he hasn't. No, let's not pay any attention to what Feynman said. Let's not pay any attention to what Einstein said. So they have this thing called quantum physics, and it really doesn't have anything to do with Einstein or Feynman. Amazing, frankly, so preposterously amazing.
The other important property of quantum theories is that you can have entanglement. We will talk about what this means another time.
Yeah, that sounds like crap too, doesn't it? Tenamount. I haven't even heard of this one.
For today, the lesson to take away is that quantizing a theory...
The lesson to take away is this is just a religion, and these are just preachers telling you a silly story, and the silly story can be debunked by looking out the window and picking up a couple of rocks and saying, it looks like evolution to me. It looks like this little bug that looks identical, and this one has spots and this one doesn't have spots. That there was some little change in, this one's ancestors hung out somewhere else for a while and got spotty, and this one's didn't. And that's all you need for an explanation. It works.
It does not mean you make it discrete. This is important also when it comes to the quantization of gravity.
Well, they're never going to do this quantization of gravity. So again, what does that mean? So quantization of gravity does not mean making gravity discrete, giving it a particle or a force carrier. It means creating woo particles that don't know where they are. So when she says quantization of gravity, it doesn't have anything to do with this. Look at her background. This geometric, straight line, discrete background. And yet she's talking about things being, well, no, it's not here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's doing this group thing. Okay, one individual is doing the group thing. It's that stupid. Because she says groups do this. Okay, groups have variance in their function in the individual. So now the individual is now a group. It's going to the store, it's going to Walmart, and it's going to the gas station at exactly the same time. It's too stupid.
Quantizing gravity does not necessarily mean that space and time have to be discrete.
So again, more nonsense. Space, number one, is nothing. So what are you talking about? Why don't you just say ether? Why do you keep lying? I mean, look, isn't this just a lie after all this time? You don't believe space is space. You believe it is ether. So call it what you believe it to be. Why play this stupid word game? The ether.
Thanks for watching. See you next week.
Oh, fuck. It's too bad. This will be unfortunate for the intelligence of the human race. An unfortunate fact. All right. So, 730 thumbs up, 8 thumbs down. Greatly rewarded for an absolute pile of crap that first isn't fair to physics, because most physicists, if you had 100 physicists, agreed physicists, she'd probably get 50-50 here, thumbs up, thumbs down in terms of, I agree with that, I don't agree with that. So she's speaking for all of physics, when she's really speaking for herself and her own little club of physicists who believe their own little wacky pile of crap. So it's just like Sean Carroll pretending we can do all these assumptions and then create this notion that there's a multiverse because we're all going to apply some dopey equation in some silly manner and declare the universe is what it isn't. All right. My life has been a lie until now. So somebody said that, actually. My life has been a lie until now, because I didn't realize I'm in the wooiverse. And nothing really is real, and it's all just little fun, sparkly, glittery things that aren't even discrete glitter. The glitter itself doesn't even know where it is. I mean, there's nothing. This is so bad. And this complete unwillingness to defend any of these underlying axioms, these assumptions, with anything like evidence. Why do you believe it? Why do you think that's what the atom looks like? And if you got the real answers, you'd find they're just as wrong as the reasons why they think the two-slit pattern is waves when it doesn't create the right pattern. Double slit pattern is not the same as a wave pattern. It doesn't work. Waves don't explain the actual pattern. A single slit does not make two waves. It's just a fact. So why do you say it does? Anyway, so unfortunately, it's just nothing. You can't do anything with this. The world is just hopelessly stupid, belligerently ignorant. I mean, they just want to be ignorant. Because it's obvious. I mean, this is obviously way overstepping the evidence, and they won't call them on it at all. As I've been saying for 7 years or 8, the evidence is incredibly weak, and they won't concede the simple argument that yes, we have very weak evidence for what we're asserting to be the truth. And they won't be honest enough just to say that. Just as they won't have the honesty to say it's not bent space, it's bent ether. Okay. So this was incomprehensible. I don't know, somebody disguising his name as some sort of inverted swastika or something? I don't know. What is the mechanics of a magnet if not magic? ? Do gravity wave detectors tell us what we want to hear? The fact that they're hearing at all is the funny part. The first Matrix was a utopia. Yes, which really doesn't make any sense, right? Right, they have to have a plot for the movie, so they make a silly plot. Because quite obviously the Matrix could be a Matrix where everybody was a millionaire and everybody lived really well, because nobody has to go to work in a Matrix, obviously. You can just, the buildings take care of themselves, everything can be maintained. So obviously we could have all lived very plush lives in the Matrix and been perfectly happy and nothing would have failed, and it's a silly argument. But there wouldn't be a movie if they couldn't create a fake conflict. So they had to create a fake conflict. Anyway, perhaps there is more to this magnetism thing than commonly thought. Whatever that is. What is it? What do people even commonly think? Fact is, all of you are clueless as to how the damn thing works. Anyway. Oh, this is just so bad. Okay, it can be tricky to find a good source of information when there's loads of sacred geometry experts and people with insights into the grand solar minimum. Actually, it is not so tricky when these David Ickeys or whatever can be seen when they first open their mouths. How is this on a subject of some kind? I'm obsessed with David Icke as a symbol of astonishing rubbish becoming a livelihood. Well, you could say that about all of them. The writer, because the writer becomes what he has written. Most would agree with much of what David the Lord, I don't know what that is, Mockington say. In general terms, people can be convinced. I don't even know what any of this even means. So the whole chain of that crap is just that, crap. Hard to see how any of it has anything to do with anything in my video, for certain. Alright, so then here's an idiot. Pancho. Okay, Pancho Lopez. Quite a few Spaniards showing up. Spaniards, probably the wrong word, right? Like Latins? I don't know. I think you're missing, what do you call, the whole variety. The variety pack. I think you're missing the point about Ken's ferrocell. Uh, all he's doing is showing you how magnetic fields, light, and the strata can cause the holographic effect. No, that's not what he's doing. He's overtly lying in the sense of, pretending that you don't need discrete light sources, which you do, or you get no pattern. So, I mean, he's overtly lying about the function, and well, I say so. I think you're missing the point. He says that light is bent by magnetism, and that's nonsense. Yes, it's complete nonsense. It can't be demonstrated in any kind of clinical experimentation ever, and you won't see it under the ferrocell. If you look under a microscope, you're not going to see it there either. Okay, he says an even continuous light creates the same effect, and that's a lie. Yeah, so I just point that out. So Pedro says the center of the pole being black with color shift clearly shows you it does in fact bend light. So it clearly doesn't. The center is black because, I mean, you're just, see, these people are so fucking stupid, and yet they're so arrogant. They don't know how anything works. They don't care to know the truth. I mean, you can see it with a regular magnet, idiot. Okay, if I put a magnet down and then I sprinkle iron filings in the magnet, all the iron filings start lining up. They line up. You can see it with like ferro liquid on a flat surface, and the liquid will do this. Okay, it'll create little spikes and cover the surface. Well, the same thing's happening when you have the magnet down. The stuff is clumping, so it's all these lines are converging in one place. So this becomes essentially a wall. And no light. Okay, so when you're shining your LED light at it, the light can't get through here. There's a bunch of frickin' iron in the way. Okay, iron isn't transparent. It can't go through the iron, idiot. So there's a thick coating of iron around the outside of the magnet, and that is why this part is dark. It's because no light can get there. But not much would reflect anyway, because under the microscope, yes, it's essentially like this. It does pile up here on the edge, and because it's in a very thin liquid, the filings they don't like pointing straight down. Okay, the little pieces of iron have a shape, and they, so when they're between a piece of glass, they don't like trying to orient that way. They have to kind of orient in this plane. So they don't really tip that way because the fluid is too thin. So they don't even go on this middle part and stick in here because they can't get in the right position. So they sort of get pushed to this edge. So this edge becomes thick with iron filings. So they can see it when you remove the magnet. You can see the pattern left behind. So this isn't hard to figure out. But of course the light can't get through because there's a whole bunch of frickin' iron in the way. Jeez. People are such idiots. Alright. You are an ignorant fool. Unlike Ken, microscopes don't lie. No. Other experiments show magnetism to bend light, and light refraction explains the curved line. Okay, so that's enough. You need a Snickers, bro. What does that even mean? Get hit by a car. You don't even refute my last comment. Of course I did. Just hurled insults. I didn't hurl any insults. I'm pointing out how it doesn't work that way, liar. Okay? Look under a microscope. Did you do that? I did it. I showed the video of it. I know what the little bits are doing, shit for brain. Okay, even Fractal Girl shows the central light missing with a 99% light source. And again, it should be missing. Of course it's missing. If you look under a microscope, you'll see exactly why it's missing. And it's missing for the same reason you can't get light to this center part if you did it with iron filings either. You could shine the light and you're not going to be able to hit the magnet with the light because there's a bunch of iron in the way, retard. Fucking dumb. Alright, then some Griffin guy shows up. If magnetism bent light in any form, you would see it with the naked eye. The point is no other experiment's more explicit in how what you can see, more simple. ever demonstrates light can be bent with any of these forces, that a force is ever bent with another force. No, because light needs something to reflect off for light to be visible. So again, you can never make light visible. You can change its path, and then you changed its path. You killed the light by absorbing it. The light we see is light that's absorbed. It didn't go somewhere else, okay? It just went into our eye and died. Well, it was Phoenix. It was turned into flames, and then it flew again. All right, like dust in the air or steam, maybe. Will that work? Again, this is irrelevant. I mean, kind of obviously, the light that the ferrocell is producing is reflected light, in the sense that it's light that is coming from the LED sources, and it's coming back to your eye, and so it's reflecting off something, quite obviously. Plasma. So where's this plasma inside the ferrocell? Ken Wheeler is an absolute moron, and so is this guy. Brush up on your quantum mechanics. You don't need quantum mechanics to figure this shit out, retard. Ugh. I mean, that's a step backwards, frankly. This asshole is probably doing something more legitimate in the sense of searching for the truth than you quantum mechanics asswipes. You're just full of lies like Ken Wheeler. It's just like. It's exactly like. We proved it. We put all the nails in the coffin. You didn't do any of that shit. Alright, this guy Ken, or you don't know how to solve the differential equations that are essential in understanding the reality of what's going on. No, you don't understand that your frickin' differential equations do not predict the pattern seen in the two-slit experiment, nor do they predict the pattern seen in the single slit, because you have to arbitrarily just decide there's two waves when there's no reason for there to be two waves. You force there to be two waves, plain and simple. No rational reason to believe a single slit creates two waves. No rational reason whatsoever. Alright, what's going on? And don't tell me math doesn't have anything to do with reality. Well, it really doesn't. Formalizing the relationship between variables is a nice little thing to do, but frankly, the underlying mechanics are not math. They're real relationships. Okay, real laws of movement and behavior. That's an argument Newton settled with the invention of calculus hundreds of years ago. So just more bullshit. Calculus is a generalization. So it's not, frankly, it's just a way of cheating. You know, doing averaging where you do enough averaging to have a pretty good margin of error. But that's all it really is. It's just a shortcut to doing the averaging math. Alright, did that already. We'll get rid of this crap. Oh, this is just such crap. God, I hate this planet. Idiot after idiot. So, another Spanish guy. Won't you take a look at my channel, dude? So, you're doing this dude thing, huh? You think that works, boy? Spicko. Wait, you think dude is okay? You really do? Alright, so his theory is this mushy crap.
Welcome to my channel.
Alright, so I looked at your channel. I see it's all this mushy crap. This is all hyperboloid nonsense, blah, blah, blah. Circles aren't really circles. They have dents in them, but we'll pretend it's a circle anyway. I'm sorry. It all is mush. Bullshit. Crap. Doesn't have anything to do with the reality.
Be careful in it. You will see
A bunch of pictures that aren't really pictures. Let's understand, too. These photographs aren't really photographs. You know. They're engineered constructs, all right, and it's all about what they put into the algorithm to make it come out this way. So it's not a real picture. It's what they hope it is picture. These are hopes, and dreams. They aren't real images. But anyway, Sorry, this is mush. You think an alien would sit there and watch this video and say, oh yeah, sure, you really explained it. No, you didn't explain shit. Dude. So then this, well, this is all way off subject, so maybe I'll save this little complainer for some other time. Whining that somehow, because somebody told him the truth, you know, somebody told him when he was a kid there was no Santa Claus and it ruined his life because, you know, he would have lived very happily searching for Santa and hope and all that kind of crap and blah, 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 blah. I mean, a real asshole. So, you know, scapegoating. I needed to live a lie, and I don't like it that somebody told me the truth once, because living a lie would have been so much more fun. Too bad. Ha 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 ha. I mean, yeah, somebody ruined by the truth. Man, sorry, no empathy. Okay, weak sauce. Obviously, even weaker screen name. His screen name's a period, and this is a guy calling somebody weak. Yeah, you're feeble sauce, okay? A big bowl of feeble sauce. Cripple sauce. You know, inane sauce. Suck sauce. You are suck sauce. So I don't know what this means. Deluxe are the meat lovers. What the fuck could that mean? I mean, really, I mean, these people are so fucking stupid. Alright. Oh, there's still something left. Okay. Well, look at all this horse shit. Don't know if we want to read all this. Oh, so it's Poncho again. Does the difference in distance between the slit and the detector reveal the ratio of the interference? It's obviously diverging light, so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger as the further and further away you go. And yes, it's all proportional to its original angle. It doesn't change or distort something. Moving further away doesn't change what the thing that I'm looking at looks like. It looks exactly the same in proportions. So, duh. Now let's see what Joe says. Both the double slit and single slit have a defined answer based upon the fact that light needs a medium to create a wave in. Some more horse shit, just absolute made up crap. Draw me a picture of that, retard. And a photon is a projectile like a bullet pushing through the air, except it's making a wave in the space in front of the bullet, and the wave is somehow it's going faster than the bullet. What are you talking about, wacky? It is the frequency of the light emitted by the laser and the distance to the screen that makes the difference in the interference pattern. So, and this is let's see whose wacky channel this is from. But this is this is just an example of how he didn't listen to the video at all. So I go to the trouble to make a fucking video and he doesn't pay any attention at all. This math does not predict the two patterns in the double slit pattern. It doesn't predict. If I use the math and try to get what's right at this location, right whether it's blanked out, their math will tell me there's a bright spot there. Their math won't predict the right answer. It'll get the wrong answer. It'll tell you the wrong answer. Their math doesn't fucking work. So why are you showing another image to the same math that doesn't predict the pattern? Oh, because you're all liars, obviously. I mean, I pointed it out right in the video. I point out how this is the real pattern. This is the one their math has to predict, and it doesn't. Alright, both the experiments can be replicated with sound. So again, you can't see the sound, right? I mean, in terms of it doesn't have any of the same resolution. It's very low resolution sound. But obviously sound doesn't create the same pattern light does. Right? So you won't get any pattern with one opening with sound. You won't magically create interference, just one opening, right? There's no two waves in sound, so it's not the same at all. And if I make the double slit, it won't create the two patterns sound. So not the same at all. and yet you're asserting it. You can do the same thing. No, you can't do the same thing. It's not the same. It's overtly not the same, and you people keep claiming it's the same. It's not the same. You can just look at it and see it's not the same. So why do you keep lying? I mean, there's a video. I just showed in the video how it's not the same, and this asshole saying it's the same. I mean, all that happens with the double slit is that is confusing, is that the only time the wave function is disrupted is when we use a detector. So again, more nonsense. They can't detect a photon, so just more lies. Oh, we used a detector. You can't use a detector because there's no such detector. You can't detect a photon going by. It's not possible, retard. So just more crap. I mean, the same fucking crap all over again, just constantly. These people spew this bullshit. I mean, right when you're pointing out in the video how it's not the truth, they'll just sit there and forget. I'm not paying any attention. The truth doesn't matter here. I'm just going to pile a big pile of lies on this board. I'm just going to type lies in response to your truth. If you find a ratio between different distances from the slit to the detector, the whole spread difference in the pattern received by the detectors, you can calculate what is really going on the slit. So you don't. You don't calculate what really happens. Again, it's all fake math. Again, I mean, I shouldn't have to draw this. I mean, I showed it in the video, for fuck's sake. The double slit pattern creates this, okay? Clearly, this is the pattern. All right? The big thing, twice as big in the middle, this, and then this, and this is, has little dots are in here, a little dot, little dot, little dot, little dot, little dot. The math doesn't, number one, predict how many dots. It doesn't predict these spots here at all. It'll get them wrong. If I use your math, tell me how intense is the light right here? It'll give me the wrong answer. Is there a dot right there? It'll give me the wrong answer. So it doesn't work. And then the single slit, again, the obvious thing to say is how do you make two waves? The wave goes in here, and all of a sudden two waves come out of here. How exactly does that happen? What rule, what law, what kind of possible mechanism could it be? What is the fucking physical mechanism? You understand you do have to have a physical mechanism, don't you? And it doesn't happen in water. And it doesn't happen in sound. That is called frequency. Frequency, slit width, and distance to the screen determine the fringe spacing. So again, more nonsense. I mean, obviously the spacing is dictated by straight line geometry. Their geometry will be drawn in straight line geometry, right? They'll do this. They'll go, here's your normal, here's your angle, okay, this is your sine theta. I mean, it's all straight line geometry. There's just no mystery to it. They make the triangle, they do this, they show you this, and they say this distance is a wavelength, and that's what makes the difference. Then you can recombine a photon here because they're the same wavelength, the same phase. The same phase shows up here, not the same phase here. Same phase here, not the same phase here. Straight lines. No waves. Fuck. So that's just measuring change in frequency from going through the slit. So again, all of the light frequencies go to the same location. They just spread across the whole thing, and all you're doing is seeing where you can remake a photon. And clearly the distance with the wavelength changes, so therefore the two lines have to be different lines when it's a smaller wavelength. Alright, the wave of the photons created are destroyed by the detector. Some more nonsense about detector experiments never conducted. Complete baby talk mush nonsense. Okay, that makes sense. So, Joe the liar convinced Pedro the idiot. Okay, amazing. It has also been found that light can pass through metals. If they're thin, yes. Light will go through gold leaf. No doubt about it. According to an astrophysicist I know, if the metals are thin enough. Yeah, duh. I mean, this is way old news. They can detect Faraday rotation. I don't know what that is. In absorption spectrum in the light output. All right, well, this one I'll find interesting. I like spectral. So this is the whole argument again. So this is just a diffraction thing. So anyway, we'll get to it though. We'll go take a look. All right. There is one other interesting experiment that shows the difference between light and a laser. Oh, it'd probably be another fractal woman piece of crap, which ejects photons, or definitely some kind of particle that makes a wave of light. The LED, which does not emit it, but just creates a wave. So this will be more really bad. This is, yeah, say the fractal woman. Here we go again. I mean, she's not doing very clinical experiments, number one, and the conclusions, I've already pointed out that her analysis is rubbish. All right, this dove tells what the observations from the galactic core. Okay, well now we're really into woo-will. Alright, this is a medium gradient caused by high energy particles interacting with magnetic fields, therefore affecting the light. No, it's being affected by the fact that that's a plasma, idiot. So you were talking about plasmas before? Yeah, there's plasmas. And plasmas are a bunch of atoms, and the light's interacting with the atoms and therefore being bent by the atoms. It's not being bent by any force. It's being bent because it's hitting electrons. That's how light gets bent. It has to hit an electron. Oh man. GPS studies show that light is indeed, I don't know, anti-stotropic as well. But it is a well-known rule that astrophysicists are taught that, according to Einstein, the spectral emission lines ought to be very distinct. That is, regardless of whether you think light is a photon, a wavicle, or medium, or the spectral lines would be distinct. They are not. That are not. We see dispersion and redshift from photons out of the galactic core. So again, more nonsense. I don't think Einstein ever says you couldn't redshift spectral lines. Where did you get that crap from, retard? Anyway. So again, just nobody wishes to deal with what's exactly in the videos. Alright, it's called slit interference, photon reconstruction. I point out how the math doesn't fit the evidence, that the evidence has bits in it you haven't come close to explaining at all. They don't fit your theory of light, and yet you just preach the same crap as if nothing took place in the video, like I didn't provide solid evidence demonstrating your theory doesn't account for the phenomenon. And it doesn't. Alright, Ken has some good points. No, he doesn't. But totally fucking ruins it by being who he is. Well, obviously it doesn't. It's working. The dumbasses are listening. Whoops, I hid you from this channel. That's probably a little extreme. But too bad. Yeah, say something stupid and yeah, you're going to pay a price for it probably. What a doughboy. Well, that's just useless crap. And make an argument. You know, this guy works at a guitar center. This is crap you could type anywhere to anyone. You think it's a really good argument? No, it's a really stupid argument. Grow up. Ugh. So, even the people on your side sometimes are just not worth the trouble. That's how bad humans are. So, anyway. I hate this planet. Yeah, that's all that can be said. I hate it. Fucking goddamn. Idiocracy everywhere.